Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my colleagues today for the time, Mr. McGovern and Mr. Khanna, for the 5 minutes on the floor to speak about an issue that is not political for me. Helping the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and his horrific, gruesome, brutal sex trafficking ring is deeply personal. And while we often have many disagreements about a lot of issues, maybe most issues, today they are allowing us to speak on the floor, and I want to thank my colleagues, Congressman Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Lauren Boebert, the four of us making history today over the discharge petition and delivering justice for those who have desperately fought for it for, in some cases, almost 30 years. I wore white today because I wanted to reflect on the innocence of the young women who had their innocence stolen from a demon named Jeffrey Epstein, from demons, friends of his, rich and powerful people who stole their innocence as young as 14 years old. It was taken from them, and they've never gotten it back. I'm also wearing white today to recognize the courage that it takes for women to come forward, the sacrifices to them personally, professionally, financially, the embarrassment, the humiliation, the shame that we still deliver on the backs of women who have been brutalized, who've been raped, who've been assaulted. The shame that the media pours over their heads, that their colleagues, their friends, their neighbors, their loved ones, because you come forward and because you talk about sexual assault, you are not a slut. It's not because of what you wore. You're not a whore. But that's how women are treated, and you're not lying. And I want every woman to know, every Epstein survivor to know, every woman across the country who is a survivor, who is a victim of assault, that today we see you. And this fight and this vote tonight, I see it is about the Epstein victims, but it's about much more than the Epstein victims. This is about the powerless, taking power away from the very powerful. This is about giving women who never had a voice, giving a voice to the voiceless. This is about their sacrifice. This is about having and recognizing their courage. This is about justice for the Epstein victims, but it's also about hope. Earlier this year, I gave a speech right here on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, detailing trauma that I experienced, endured, and am a survivor of, that I accidentally uncovered 2 years ago, almost to the day. And today, I still don't have justice, like millions of women across the country. When I spoke out, I got attacked. When I spoke out, I was shamed. When I spoke out, I was defamed and smeared, and that goes on today, right now, in the present. God sure has a funny way of working through us. I, like many of the Epstein survivors and many other survivors across the country, I don't think I will ever heal from the destruction my abuser did to me. But I can heal by being a vessel and being a voice for all those who need it, and that's why we are here today. That is why I will never abandon a single survivor ever, and I will never waver. I spent my morning talking to law enforcement and others about another potential Jane Doe number 5, who may be another sexual assault victim in the case that I uncovered 2 years ago. It's very difficult for us to come forward, but I want to thank the women who have, the Epstein victims, the victims in the case that I uncovered.
Mr. Speaker, all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And we've had a lot of good men doing a lot of nothing on the other side of the aisle until we did something. 3 brave women and myself and the Democrat caucus. We did something. And then what did they do? They've opposed us every step of the way. They've lied about the legislation. Let me tell you some of the lies they've told. They've said that it doesn't protect victims. Well, if that is so, why were dozens of victims with us today at a press conference urging this body to pass this legislation? It's because this legislation specifically protects victims. They've said this legislation does not prevent the release of child pornography. Of course it does. We have a specific provision in our legislation to prevent that. They've said so many falsehoods about this legislation, but now they're going to vote for it, hopefully enthusiastically. But really, they've been drugged to this. Our judicial system is broken. If it were working, there wouldn't be 1,000 victims who haven't seen justice yet. They are victims of the Epstein class. I begrudge nobody success that they become a billionaire. But if you think being a billionaire or buying politicians keeps you out of the judicial system, lets you rape young women, lets you traffic women, you've got another thing coming when this bill passes. Do not let the Senate muck this up. There have already been efforts to derail this, our discharge petition. The Oversight Committee has released thousands, tens of thousands of documents. That's fine. Keep working. How many names have you released? 0. You are still protecting, or the DOJ is protecting, pedophiles and sex traffickers. The time for that to stop is now. Now, our speaker says, oh, this bill needs amended in the Senate, and specifically, he's trying to create a loophole. He's trying to categorize the pedophiles as victims. He's saying, oh, we don't embarrass the people that went to the rape island. We should protect those names against unreliable accusations. Is he calling all of these victims unreliable? They've testified to the FBI. The FBI has these names in their possession. I asked the FBI director in a hearing, have you looked at the documents? No, he trusts everybody that's been there for decades. That is wrong. Do not let the Senate muck this bill up. And if you're a party to that in the Senate, you are part of this cover-up that we are trying to expose. I am sorry if one of your billionaire donors is going to get embarrassed because he went to Rape Island. That is what they have coming. In fact, they need to be on the other side of bars, a lot of them. Some of them will be embarrassed, but some of them need to go to prison, and the survivors know that. So how will we know if this bill has been successful? We will know when there are men, rich men, in handcuffs being perp-walked to the jail. And until then, this is still a cover-up. I urge my Senate colleagues, do not muck up this bill. The president has already said he will sign it. That means he will sign the bill that we have here today. Do not change this bill. He is ready to sign it. Give it to him. Put it on his desk. Let's get justice for these victims.
Thank you. And first, let me say how much I admire the courage of my Republican colleagues who are beside me here today. Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, this is not about us, and it's not about politics. This is about the survivors, young girls who were exploited by powerful men who use money and power to take advantage of girls, some as young as 11 years old. The President of the United States calls it all a hoax. Can you imagine that? What an evil and disgusting thing to say. These young girls, now women, the survivors, what happened to them was horrific. They were sexually abused, many of them for years, and the President of the United States calls it all a hoax. What kind of messed up, sick-in-the-head, immoral person says something like that? This bill is about making sure powerful men are held accountable. It's about demanding truth and transparency for the American people. Now, Republican leaders in this House lost control of the story. They lost the ability to hide behind procedure, and they lost the luxury of pretending that they were ever on the right side. The American people see it, survivors see it, and history will see it. And listening to the Speaker of the House's press conference today, I mean, it sounds like he basically wants to kill this whole thing. He's trying to obstruct and derail the process. Why the hell is he fighting so hard to do the opposite of what the survivors want? What an awful, awful thing to do. So let us release the files. Let's give survivors the transparency they've long been denied. Let us take back power from the rich billionaire elites who think they can do whatever they want with no justice or accountability.
Today, 4 months and 3 days after Mr. Khanna and Mr. Massey introduced their discharge petition, perhaps the most famous discharge petition in American history, the People's House unites across party lines to draw a moral line. We draw a line against the rape and sexual violation of children. We draw a line against the global criminal trafficking of girls and young women to service the pleasure of rich and powerful men who believe they are beyond all law and all morality. We draw a line to put the voices of the victims and the survivors first. We ask the Senate to join us without changes rather than obstruct this bill with dilatory amendments, legislative graffiti, and self-dealing million-dollar jackpot provisions for lucky senators. Just pass the bill. We're finally voting today because a bipartisan discharge petition led by Representatives Massey and Khanna and signed by 218 of us overthrew the determined obstruction of the Speaker. This forced vote means the House will no longer acquiesce in this astonishing real-time cover-up of a multi-billion-dollar global sex trafficking and child rape ring that has ravaged the lives of more than 1,000 girls and young women. We're here today because these victims, these survivors, these citizens, these inspiring women who have come to Washington are demanding nothing less than justice and the complete truth about who is responsible for their vicious abuse, including those responsible for enabling it, ignoring it, bankrolling it, and covering it up. We join them today in rejecting any more dangerous lies about the crimes they suffered. No, child sex abuse is not a hoax. It's a crime. Human trafficking is not a hoax. It's a crime. These crimes are a curse on children and young people across America, in universities and elementary schools, in churches and mosques and synagogues, in Boy Scout troops and college sports teams and summer camps. Anywhere the powerful and the rich believe they've got the opportunity and the impunity to exploit the young, the poor, the powerless, and the vulnerable. We must face the truth and find the co-conspirators still at large in one of America's most extensive and sophisticated sex trafficking and child abuse rings in history. Release of the file will expose the role of everybody who facilitated and covered up these crimes, like J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, and Bank of New York Mellon, which executed billions of dollars in transactions related to these offenses, as well as any bank executives who participated in the sexual abuse of girls and young women. We must expose everyone who covered up these crimes, like Alex Acosta, the former U.S. attorney in Miami, Donald Trump's labor secretary, who gave Jeffrey Epstein an unbelievable sweetheart plea deal, immunized unnamed conspirators, and killed an investigation into Epstein's financial crimes that could have brought down the entire criminal network.
Thousands of girls, children, were abused by Jeffrey Epstein and his massive and powerful ring of pedophiles and protectors of pedophiles. We can't say all their names here, we don't have time, but let's at least bring a few of the courageous survivors and their names onto the House floor right here as we debate this. Haley Robson, Jenna Lisa Jones, Michelle Licata, Ashley Rubright, Annie Farmer, Marina Lacerda, Rachel Benavides. These women have carried a burden that they never should have had to bear. And today, they demand, we demand, the American people demand that we answer their clarion call to justice. Today, despite all the giant cover-up attempts by this administration and this Speaker of the House, we will vote to release all the Epstein files. To be clear, there is no protection for pedophiles, no protection for the rich and powerful men of either party who participated, who turned a blind eye, who winked and grinned while witnessing the horrific abuses of young children.
This should be an easy vote. This is about justice for the victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. This is about every victim of trafficking and sexual abuse, monstrous crimes that thrive in secrecy and fear. Yet instead of shining a light on that darkness, just moments ago, Donald Trump defended the continued obstruction of releasing these files. Even as House Republicans prepare to vote yes today, Speaker Johnson is calling this a show vote. He's calling it dangerous. He is signaling the U.S. Senate to block it. Republicans continue to use their power to shield rich pedophiles from justice. If you can't stand up for these survivors, how can anyone trust you to stand up for them?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support to release the Epstein files. First, this issue is beyond party. It's a question of justice. Survivors have waited too long. Stop the delay. This is not a hoax. Release the files. Second, we must face a hard truth. Silence that shields the powerful is a betrayal of those they hurt. Congress must reject any attempt, including a presidential pardon or any form of clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell. This cannot be done. This would be a cover-up. We cannot allow clemency of any kind for Maxwell, not now, not ever. Survivors deserve justice. I urge a strong yes vote. Thank you.
I want to remind you that we are all here voting on this bill because President Trump, who has the power to release the Epstein files at any time, has refused to do so, calling this a hoax. We're here because Speaker Mike Johnson and President Trump have gone to extraordinary lengths to try to kill and delay the discharge petition, including refusing to seat Adelita Grijalva for over 40 days and threatening House Republicans who signed on. Now, several of my Republican colleagues have accused those of us House Democrats who support justice here of having Trump derangement syndrome. You all suffer from something much worse, which is pedophile protection syndrome. Stop protecting pedophiles, release the Epstein files. The victims deserve justice.
For 43 long days, the Democrats held this House and the entire country hostage. Finally, with the lights back on, this body's returning to our regular legislative session. We have a lot of work to do. My colleagues on this side of the chamber are ready and eager to get back to our urgent legislative work that we promised the American people we would do. We've got to continue lowering the cost of health care. We've got to bring down prices for American families, and we've got to finish the regular appropriations process, just to name a few of those priorities. And I wish I could say that our first order of business would be to get to those urgent priorities, but of course we're here spending time on the floor about something else. This is something we could have resolved last week when we brought a unanimous consent to pass this discharge with the full support of the body. But our friends over here who are arguing today stalled that. They objected to it, and they wanted to have this exercise instead. And that's why we say that this is a show vote. That's what this is. They're making a show of it. And it really is a shame. We have some heroic women in the chamber today. I met with many of them a while back. They're in the gallery here. They have come forward. They have shown their faces. They've used their names to share the unspeakable tragedies that many of them were subjected to, some of them when they were very young. And it is a heroic service to the country. They are seeking justice, and the justice has been delayed for too long. The Department of Justice, many years ago, should have brought these charges. It took too long to do it. And now we're in this process of making sure all the American people get the information, but we have to do it in the right way, After 4 years of Democrat control under President Biden, they were not truthful with us about a lot of things. The Democrats insisted the border was secure. We knew it wasn't. They insisted that inflation was transitory. We knew it wouldn't be. They misled the American people about the obvious mental and physical decline of the previous commander-in-chief. And now those same Democrats are demanding transparency. Suddenly, transparency is their new word. Out of nowhere, they've taken a curious concern in the Epstein investigation, all in the name of that, in the name of transparency. But the question has been asked here many times during the debate on the floor, and everybody questioning why it is that Democrats have done this right now have to look at the obvious facts. The Democrats had all the Epstein files in their possession for 4 long years under the Biden presidency. The Biden Department of Justice had these files, and no one on this side who is breathless today about the urgency of this release ever said a word about it. And it was the Democrats who could have urged President Biden's Department of Justice to go beyond prosecuting just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, but they didn't do it. And so it's a fair question to ask today, why now? Why the sudden urgent interest in Jeffrey Epstein? Look, we know why. It's because the Democrats were never interested in transparency or executing justice or protecting the victims of this unspeakable tragedy before. The simple truth is obvious for everybody to see. This is a political exercise for Democrats, and it pains me to say it. I wish that was not the truth, but it is, and it's undeniable. This is as deceitful and dishonest as their pointless stunt was to shut the government down. Democrats are using the Epstein tragedy, the unspeakable evils that this guy committed with his trafficking ring and all of the abuses that they made these young women go through. They're using that as a political weapon to try to distract from their failures as a party and to try their best to try to tie President Trump somehow into this wretched scandal. The president had nothing to do with it. He's been very clear, and he has nothing to hide, and that's why he's endorsed the vote today. I suspect this vote will be probably unanimous. But here's the important point that everybody needs to understand. We have been advocates of maximum transparency, but we have also insisted that the victims be carefully protected. The Oversight Committee has been doing extraordinary work, and we've got some of the most vigorous advocates on the Republican and Democrat side on the Oversight Committee. They've been working in earnest to deliver transparency for the American people and to do it in a responsible manner. What do we mean by that? The bipartisan effort over there is already producing all the results that the discharge petition seeks and much, much more. Chairman Comer and all of these advocates over there have been releasing thousands of documents, for example, from the Epstein estate. By the way, in my view, that's been the greatest treasure trove of information because it's yielded for us Epstein's own personal flight logs, his financial records, his daily calendars, and so much more. But importantly, none of that was addressed or is addressed in the legislation that's being voted on today. The estate files wouldn't even have been encompassed in that. And so it goes to show that the Oversight Committee is doing it from the right way. From the very beginning, we've been insistent that this matter be handled carefully and with the utmost caution and care for the people who have been harmed. They should not be made to suffer any longer. We're talking about real people's lives at stake here, and young victims who don't want to be dragged into this political game that could get hurt further. But the Democrats are rushing the release of thousands of unsubstantiated documents that may be included in this, that are going to be in the public domain with the passage of this bill. And there are serious deficiencies in the legislation that I have noted at length, and Republicans have to work to address those deficiencies in the Senate if and when this legislation is advanced. I stood before the American public today at our press conference, and I explained in detail the dangers of the discharge petition. We have posted at my website, speaker.gov, a summary. The legal counsel, a small army of lawyers, put this together. I used to be a federal court litigator. Many of my colleagues who have spoken today were. We understand the dangers of how this was haphazardly drawn up. And among them, by the way, Mr. Speaker, before I forget, I seek unanimous consent to enter into this document into the record. It is that. It's on the website. It's entitled, How the Flaws of H.R. 4405 Could Re-Victimize Epstein's Victims, Create New Victims, and Damage the Judicial System. It is dated today. Thank you. And it summarizes just 5 or 6 of the major concerns. Among them, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. It could create new categories of victims. It potentially jeopardizes grand jury secrecy. It fails to prohibit release of child sexual abuse materials that are not appropriately defined in the legislation. It jeopardizes future federal investigations, and we have national security concerns regarding classified information. We'll put this in the record because we need the legislative record to reflect what is the legislative intent behind this vote. I used to litigate cases. We would litigate federal statutes and whether or not they could survive, and legislative intent is important, and we need to say clearly for the record, as a Speaker of the House, I'm saying to you, this legislation that will pass today is flawed and it must be amended. The question is, why didn't we amend it here before we passed it? Because the authors won't allow it. Because under the rules of the House, under a discharge petition, they have to agree to consent for the legislation to be amended, and they're not doing that. So now we rely upon our partners in the other chamber to get that done, and they need to do that. The victims deserve our utmost respect. In fact, they should be saluted for their courage. And the young women who have not come forward, who are now, some of them are middle-aged women who have not come forward, also deserve our respect, and they deserve to be protected. Republicans support transparency. We want maximum transparency, especially when it comes to disclosing the names of anybody who had anything to do with these evils, anybody who conspired with or aided in any way Jeffrey Epstein. They must be brought to justice. We want the bill to be amended so it doesn't, at the same time, violate victim privacy, create new victims, disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, cause the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermine our national security. And if and when the Senate takes this up, we will work with our colleagues over there to make sure that these things are corrected. I'll just close with this simple thought. We've been at this a while. It's drug on for a while. But it's time for this to come to light. I expect that this will be a unanimous vote, and it will reflect what I think every member in this chamber, and I'll say this now, at least in recent days, every member of the chamber on the Democrat side, they didn't say anything for 4 years, but they're for maximum transparency now, and so is this side. But we want to do it in a respectful and careful manner so that we don't subject innocent people to further harm. And that has been the whole thing. I told all my members today I'll be voting yes on this, and I suspect almost everyone will. We'll send it to the Senate, and we hope it's corrected. Thank you for the time, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
I'll take the opportunity of the Speaker's presence to respond to some of the things that he said. In the very presence of the victims and the survivors who come to join us today, the Speaker said that now would be a time we should be working on urgent legislative work. Mr. Speaker, justice is urgent legislative work. The truth is urgent legislative work. The Speaker says, why now? Why now? Well, Mr. Speaker, you were the one who refused to swear in Adelita Grajova for 50 days. We would have done it 50 days ago, but she provided the 218th signature on the discharge petition. So why now? It was because of your dilatory tactics, your delay, your postponement of it. Now, the gentleman says that there are not sufficient protections. There are protections in the bill for the victims to make sure that their names will be redacted. And yet we hear even the Speaker of the House of Representatives openly inviting the U.S. Senate to start finger painting on this bill, which we have waited more than 5 months to bring to the floor. The Senate should pass the bill exactly as it's written. The President should sign it exactly as he said he would when he finally changed his mind. And the Epstein file must be released. Moreover, if the President is serious about what he's saying, he's got the power to release the Epstein file right now. Nobody's stopping him. It's within his possession. It's within his control. He can release the whole thing, and he can redact the names of the victims and others who are innocent in this process. Mr. Speaker, Speaker Johnson said that these are unspeakable evils. Well, because of the bravery and the invincible courage of the women who've joined us today, they're no longer unspeakable. They're spoken. They're articulated. The cat is out of the bag, and we know what's been going on for decades. It's been a double standard of justice, going all the way back to Alex Acosta, who later got rewarded with a cabinet appointment in the Trump administration. Alex Acosta had a 60-count federal indictment ready to go against all kinds of people for an interstate sex trafficking conspiracy with solicitation, with child sex abuse, all of it. And he traded that 60-count federal indictment for 1 count in state court. And Jeffrey Epstein ended up getting the sweetest of sweetheart deals ever on the plea bargain front. He was free from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to do whatever he wanted and continuing to perpetrate his crimes and run his conspiracy, and then he would come and he would watch TV and spend the night in jail. And it was over in about a year after the rape and sexual abuse of hundreds and hundreds of girls, and he kept going and he kept at it. We want the whole truth to come out. This is the United States of America. Even the British monarchy wouldn't put up with this. How about the American democracy? How about we say, no way, we're not going to allow this cover-up to go on for 1 day more. And I'm glad the President changed his mind after pulling out all the stops to try to get one of our Republican colleagues to change their mind, to remove their name from the discharge petition, he gave up. And I want to salute the gentlelady from Colorado from having the courage to stand her ground in the Situation Room in the White House and say, no, she wasn't going to be bullied. No. So I'm glad the president changed his mind, but let's be clear, Mr. President, you've got the power today to release the entire file. That's what you called for. That's what Pam Bondi called for. That's what Kash Patel called for. So we don't need anybody calling for the Senate to slow things down for more weeks and more months. The American people have had it.
The Democrat Party, with help from the dishonest media, used the Epstein files not to seek justice from the victims, but to smear President Trump. And it's sickening, quite sickening. The Democrats have used the Epstein files to distract the American people from the wins President Trump and his administration have delivered for the American people for the last 11 months. I'm proud to work with my Republican colleagues on the House Oversight Committee in coordination with the Justice Department. 65,000 pages of documents are related from Epstein released. What have my Democrat colleagues done? They selectively leaked and altered documents to mislead the American people. As President Trump has stated, we have nothing to hide here. I'm voting to release the files so that we can move on from this smear campaign the Democrats have manufactured.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank all of America for tuning in to this. I want to thank Representatives Massey and Khanna, Representative Green, all of those who have insisted upon bringing the truth forward and a reckoning with the reality of one of the worst international child sex trafficking rings ever to exist in the United States, and the cover-up attendant to it. We've got the opportunity today to do justice for the victims, for the survivors who have come forward to say that the voice of the victims and the survivors must be put at the very center of our deliberations. Not shunted off to the side, not submerged, not subordinated, but put at the very center. We must hear from the people who themselves were victimized by this nightmare. Now, our colleagues across the aisle seem to want to make this into some sort of partisan contest. I haven't heard so much talk about the Democrats since the Democratic National Convention. And all that we've done here is to say we want to bring the truth forward, along with a bipartisan group. We don't want the Senate monkeying around with this in order to slow things down. We want it passed in the Senate. We want it signed. And before that, if the president is true to his word and he wants to see all of this come to light, he can release it now, instead of fighting, kicking, and screaming every step along the way. But I'm glad he's changed his mind, and I hope he maintains the momentum he's got to stick with the vast majority of the American people who want to see that the truth is done here. And while he's at it, the administration could reconsider their terrible policies gutting federal offices and programs designed to combat violence against women. The DOJ terminated hundreds of grants to police departments, defunding the police when it comes to investigating violent sex crimes and to support victims. His DOJ destroyed programs to combat international human trafficking rings. Let's get back on the side of the women.